Talk is cheap anyway, kid. Believe me, I ought to know.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and these are all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in The Walking Dead: Dead City, Episode 3. We open with the flashback of Negan and Jenny in the woods. Jenny is looking for her stuffed dinosaur that we can assume was given to her by her late father. Jenny's obsession with this dinosaur is meant to represent her inability to let go of the past. Essentially, the dinosaur symbolizes extinction. The world we once knew is long gone. Society as we once knew it is gone. But we see various groups of survivors trying to hold on to what was. In Dead City, we've been introduced to this new government called the New Babylon Federation.
I come from New Babylon, capital city.
They have marshals with badges who go around with wanted posters attempting to resurrect an outdated form of law and order in a post-apocalyptic world. So while Jenny is unable to let go of her dinosaur and accept that her father is gone, most survivors as a whole are unable to let go of their own personal dinosaurs, that dinosaur being the connection to the way things were, a way of life that is dead and gone. We also need to point out that Jenny's connection to Negan likely stems from her grief. In last week's episode, we saw Jenny leave the safety of New Hilltop, and in this episode, we see that she's going to find Negan in New York. In this flashback, we even hear Negan say,
"All I have been doing for months is trying to find a safe place for you. And you have been sticking to me like goddamn crazy glue."
The overall theme of this show seems to be our character's inability to let go of the past. Maggie is still struggling to let go of Glenn. Negan is struggling to let go of his checkered past. The Croat is struggling to let go of his hate. The New Babylon is struggling to let go of the old world. And Jenny is struggling to let go of her father.
Or maybe she just really likes that dinosaur. I know what it's like to lose a toy. I've been digging holes every day looking for my squeaky water hydrant.
Buddy, you gotta let that go. We'll get you a new one.
I don't want a new one. It's not the same. I already rode around on that one. I refuse to let go. Oh, actually, yeah, I see your point about the show. Thank you.
Okay, so a little later, these dinosaur themes go even deeper, but more on that in a bit. In this flashback, we hear Negan laying out some back-to-back curse words that are very reminiscent of his character from the comics. Every other word from Negan in the comics was a curse word, followed by another curse word, and topped off with, one more curse word.
Not f***ing cool. You have no f***ing idea how not f***ing cool that shit is.
Here we see Negan, Maggie, and their new friends hunting a deer. Now, we've seen the same deer in the Dead City intro before, and I mentioned that it reminds me of this deer from I Am Legend, and of course this crucial deer from Season 2 of The Walking Dead. And oh my god, how is the CGI as bad as it was 10 years ago? Don't get me wrong, I know digital effects artists are overworked, underpaid, and not given ample time to do their work. So, no disrespect to the artist, but that deer looks awful.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
Here we get this line from the Croat confirming that he's attempting to replicate Negan's sanctuary.
What we have built here is a sanctuary.
In the original series, we've heard Negan try to justify his villainous ways by claiming that he provides protection for the groups that he keeps under his thumb, and that he is saving them.
Why didn't you just let me save you, Rick?
Herds of walkers are being lured by the Croat's crew using an old Thanksgiving Day parade float. Now this is a tactic we've seen the Saviors use before to lure walkers away from the sanctuary. Well, they tried. Now we've talked before about all the different names The Walking Dead has used for zombies.
You call them walkers.
Empties.
I call them the past.
Fighters.
Well, here we get a new one to add to that list. Fleshy.
Army shoved in all the fleshies they killed till they got turned into fleshies too.
Yeah, I don't like that one.
Yeah, it's gross. And speaking of gross, we got these tanks filled with walkers. Now, I'm not sure what it is with the bad guys and having tanks full of bodies. Just recently, we saw Moff Gideon's tanks in The Mandalorian, Darth Vader's tanks in the Kenobi series, and even in The Walking Dead, we saw the governor keep severed heads in fish tanks. In last week's episode, we saw the marshal get captured Ewok style by the Croat and his crew. In this scene between the Croat and the marshal, the Croat reveals that he was a scientist before the apocalypse, and that with New York City's walker-filled sewers bursting with methane, he can use the dead as fuel.
As the bodies break down, they produce methane. The gas can be pressurized into a liquid fuel.
This explains the tanks full of walkers and brings us back to the theme of this episode and really the series as a whole: dinosaurs.
A dinosaur!
Earlier I mentioned that the dinosaur represents a time that has come and gone. Jenny's obsession with the dinosaur toy and her late father parallels the survivors' inability to let go of the past and their grief for the old world.
It's time to let old things die.
Society, as our survivors once knew it, has gone extinct, as has the overwhelming majority of the human race. In the comics, the walkers outnumber humans by about 5,000 to 1, so humanity has endured an apocalyptic fate similar to that of the dinosaurs. and now the decaying bodies of the walkers are being used for fuel, just like how in the modern day we use dead dinosaurs as fossil fuels. And yes, I am also aware that the majority of fossil fuels are made up of dead plants and plankton, but my point remains the same. Walkers, old forms of bureaucracy, and survivors who can't let go of the way things were are now fossils in their own right. And if they don't adapt, they will die and become fuel for the living.
Wow, that's deep.
Thanks, man.
No, I mean like deep in the ground, like a fossil.
Hey, Colton, it's actually been a while since I've watched The Walking Dead. Can you break down all the stuff in the box for me?
Hey, yeah, for sure. So, in this box, we got a lot of cool stuff. We get this old family photo that was taken at the Green family farm right on the steps of that classic farmhouse from The Walking Dead Season 2. We also get this photo of Maggie with her dad Herschel, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that these are likely pictures from the refrigerator that we saw right here in Season 2. I'm guessing that Maggie or Beth or Herschel, one of them snagged these pictures right before that big horde of walkers took over the farm in the Season 2 finale. Next up, we see Herschel's pocket watch that he gave to Glenn when he was giving Glenn his blessing to be in a relationship with Maggie.
Go on now, before I change my mind about you.
And don't even get Rick Grimes started on that pocket watch.
Where the hell did you get this watch?
Now, what really hurts here is that in that very scene when Herschel is giving Glenn the watch, he says this.
If you become a father someday, you'll understand.
But Glenn never got to experience fatherhood because he was killed by Negan before Herschel Jr. was even born.
Back to it.
Next, we see this picture of Maggie and Herschel Jr. when he was just a baby, and then we get this drawing of Glenn. Now, I'm not exactly sure who drew this picture, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it was probably Jadis, aka Anne, the lady who took Rick away in the helicopter in Season 9. She was an artist, and she actually painted this portrait of Glenn that hung at Hilltop, as well as this one of Beth, Maggie's sister, and this one of Herschel. Now, like I said, these paintings hung at the old Hilltop, so they probably got destroyed when the Whisperers burned it down with the help of Negan when he was undercover.
You are a badass.
So that means that all the pictures and stuff in this box Maggie has, that's likely the only pictures, everything that she has to remember her family by. And she says as much right here.
And whatever's left of all of them is inside this box.
Now, in this scene, we see everyone start taking out these random objects that belong to or represent people that they have lost. We actually get to see the high necklace from last week's episode that belonged to Esther. And then we see Maggie take out that folded up drawing of Glenn. And this just yet again symbolizes that our hero characters are committed to honoring and mourning their dead. But then we cut right over to the Croat, who is giving this speech about how we should celebrate the dead, for they are our fuel.
Death is no end. It is our fuel. Because people are a resource!
Now, people are a resource is the title of this episode, but it is not the first time we've heard this line spoken in The Walking Dead.
People are a resource.
So this is just yet another example of something that the Croat has taken from Negan and dialed it to 11.
Okay, I'm back.
Where'd you go?
I took my break.
Break? What do you think I'm running here? Charity? Get back to it.
Yes, sir. So Negan comes in with a ball cap that he found and gives it to Maggie for Herschel. He says that he remembers Herschel used to wear one all the time. And yes, Herschel did wear a cap a lot in the original series, and this was inspired by his dad. Glenn wore a cap a lot in the first 2 seasons of The Walking Dead, as well as in the comics. So I'm sure we'll get some mushy scene where Herschel puts on the cap come the end of the season.
Remember Herschel used to wear one sort of like it. Thought maybe you could give it to him when you see him.
This look back at Maggie's family reminded me that she's the only green left. Out of all the new characters we met on that farm in Season 2, she's the only one still kicking. Now, Negan hasn't had it easy either. He tragically lost his wife to cancer in the early days of the outbreak. We'll talk more about that in just a bit. But here we learned that his second wife, Annie, and his newborn child are no longer in the picture.
So I put him on a wagon train to Missouri, and I said I'd be right behind him.
This is also where we learn why Negan's on the run and wanted by the New Babylon marshals.
She'd been robbed, beaten. I found them. All 5 of them. Honestly, I don't think I even wanted to kill them.
When Negan says that he sent Annie and his kid on a train to Missouri, promising them he'd be right behind them, he reveals that he lied and he isn't rejoining them in hopes that they can have a better life without him being on the run and causing trouble. This gives us a preview into the psyche of Negan. After all his heinous acts, he is riddled with guilt. Negan clearly doesn't believe that he deserves good things, and he thinks that anything he cares for is destined to burn. He lost his first wife, he lost his sanctuary, he lost the war, and he believes that he deserved it all and more. He broke bad, and now he hates himself himself for it.
I hope to God they are okay, and maybe I have no right in hoping that.
And speaking of Negan Breaking Bad, we actually got some references to AMC's other hit series that, unlike Walking Dead, did not overstay its welcome, Breaking Bad.
Goddamn right.
When the marshal is placed in this fighting cage with walkers, he severs this walker's head the same way Walter White choked out Crazy 8 in season 1 of the series. We also see these gas masks just like the one from Breaking Bad, only this time they aren't being used to protect from toxic fumes, they're being used to ingest toxic fumes from the walker tanks, causing the person donning the mask to become high. Next, we hear the Croat tell his own backstory. Previously, Negan said,
Well, let's just say he had been through some really bad shit.
And boy, was he right.
My family had become a meal for another starving family.
The Croat is an example of what this fallen world creates, and the type of person you can become when faced with so much loss and brutality. Negan was a good man turned bad who has managed to find his way back to the light. Maggie is a woman who's lost everything and everyone she's ever cared about, but has still managed to hold on to her own sanity and her own set of morals. For example, when Maggie sees Jenny's dinosaur in the street hall, she realizes that Jenny has followed her and Negan to New York. She knows that if Negan sees the toy dinosaur, he'll know Jenny is on the island. And then, finding Jenny will become Negan's main mission. Maggie doesn't want that to happen. She wants all of Negan's focus to be on saving her son. So, back to the fossil fuel analogy, we burn fossil fuels to take advantage of the energy they can provide. Just like Maggie was about to burn this toy dinosaur to prevent Negan from focusing his energy on looking for Jenny. Maggie's hesitation to burn the dinosaur is yet another example of her refusing to let this new world get the better of her. She still has a sense of right and wrong within her. Deep down, Maggie hopes that her son can one day experience a world that is not as brutal, cruel, and survivalistic as the one he was born into. We jump back to the flashback scene where we hear Negan mention his late wife, Lucille.
That was the whistle that my wife Lucille used. And she would do that whistle, and it didn't matter what I was doing or where I was, I came running.
Now, Lucille, of course, was the name of the infamous baseball bat that took Glenn's life and many others. That bat was named after his late wife who died of cancer in the early days of the apocalypse.
Now it's time for you to go on without me.
This is in reference to the flashback episode, Here's Negan, from episode 10 of the original series. That episode showed Negan going on the run to get Lucille medicine while she waited for him back at home.
I'm gonna find these doctors, and I am gonna bring you back the drugs that you need.
This whistle is also in reference to Negan's infamous whistle. A whistle that the Croat has taken as his own.
Right before he took my son, do you know what he did?
So those are all the Easter eggs we found in Dead City. If we missed anything, let us know in the comments below, or you could @ me or Colton on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, guys, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.